So, this morning came up from London at 1 o'clock, got into Newcastle, went over to the Civic Centre, seminar at, well, not seminar, an advisory group at 2 o'clock, which was about some of the budget proposals, basically the sort of outline shape of the council budget for the coming year. And some interesting proposals. Obviously there's a lot of savings, a lot of cuts have to be made. But there were some proposals which I said should have actually been done years ago, which, although they're being driven because of the financial savings they would make now, are actually sound common sense things to do. And it was two areas of social services in particular, and one area in terms of transport that were of most interest. First of all, the council is proposing to shift resources into, in terms of care for the elderly, into getting support into people's homes that allow people to be more independent and avoid going into residential homes, which are much more expensive. Then there was also issues about the childcare system, where the council is now looking to intervene earlier on in where you've got cases of troubled families, I think would be the best way to phrase them, and to help keep those families together and keep kids in the family home rather than taking them out. So in effect it was to address the problems at an earlier stage, because they're much cheaper, frankly, to deal with, and you get a much better result rather than waiting for the problems to fester, and then intervening at a very late stage where the costs are more. You're also more likely to have to take the child out of the family home as well. So there were two areas where the council is now looking to make those changes, which I said we would have had to have done anyway, whether or not they were financially led. And the third area that we looked at, which I said should have been done ages ago, was the fleet, the council fleet, and the way it's driven. Because the director said that once they put their staff through a training course on better driving techniques that actually mean that people aren't racing around, driving around the streets of Gateshead in a way that actually burns up fuel more rapidly, then if people were driving as they would have been according to the training, such a much more calmer, gentler driving, so no sudden braking, no sudden acceleration, and so on, then they reckon that they can save £190,000 a year on fuel costs, because our our vehicles are driven much more fuel efficiently. And I said, as well as the savings, which are really important, actually that's a really important point about our environment, about emissions, air quality and pollution emissions into the atmosphere. So there's a number of reasons why some of these savings should go ahead, which were more than just financial savings. Of course, there are other areas where clearly members are going to be unhappy that, frankly, the council has to withdraw from a particular set of services because there's just not the money to pay for them, and the council needs to close a £29 million funding gap. So that was this afternoon's meeting. I then rushed home, had a bit of late lunch, went over, sorted my livestock out, and then I've come back to Gateshead Civic Centre where I am now. I'm actually in the opposition office at the minute, but through that way is a meeting of the planning committee, and I'm in because on the agenda is the final decision on Chase Park and whether the council is going to allow house building on the site of the stable block there.